Coast Unitarian Universalist Congregation in Stuart, Florida. Today is January 8th, 2023. My name is Pat Burt, and for the first time in a very, very long time, I will be your worship associate. We are a welcoming congregation. We welcome people of all gender identities, ethnicities, ages, and backgrounds. It is wonderful to see all of our vaccinated friends, visitors, and members in the sanctuary. We are also on YouTube. To be put on our email list or to find out more information about us, please go to our website, tcuuc.org. Note the email link to request our Friday online newsletters. Please now silence your cell phones. Thank you. Some new things at the beginning of a new year. We started last week with 10:30 services. We're starting today with a once-a-month sermon discussion circle after the service. And we started last week with orders of service, or as my old Methodist church called them, bulletins. Please stay afterwards for the sermon response circle. A couple of brief announcements. Next week, Reverend Dr. John Brown is in our pulpit on January 29th. Karen Olish and Rachel Valentino will share some important insights facing people who are transgender. I'm going to just very briefly mention a couple of other events. We're just exploding here. If you are interested in helping to start a Second Covenant Support women's group, please sign up in the narthex and see Judy Bajoris here waving her hand to find out more about that. Restarting this coming Wednesday is the men's luncheon group at Key West Diner, which is on the east side of US 1, just north of the Roosevelt Bridge. The men can meet there at 12:30. There's still time to sign up for the January 19th Adventure Club. That sign up, see Fred if you have questions, and the sign up sheet is also in the narthex. Bob's interested in knowing who would like to begin a gathering to discuss issues of science. You can let Bob know if you're interested, and the first one will meet after the service on January 22nd. The ever-growing popular brown bag lunch, the first, oh yeah, there's Pam there, see Pam about this. Brown bag lunch, first and third Tuesdays at noon at the Veterans Memorial Park in downtown Stuart. If you come later than 12, you might want to bring a folding chair. It's quite popular. Okay, let's see. And there's a regular, is John here today? John Morn? No? There's a regular Zoom book discussion on Wednesdays at 11 a.m. And that's currently discussing little fires everywhere. Okay. We'll now have our prelude by Jackie.
Hi, good morning.
you, Jackie. I also failed to mention I want to thank Jackie and a little bit later Judy Joris for our music this morning. Our coffee hosts, coffee and cookies hosts are Joanne Leone and Marguerite Gregory. And we always can't survive without our host, tech host, Corina Maloney, and our tech wizard, Chris McGann. Bob will now help us light the chalice. May this chalice flame light our way to a deeper understanding of our values, beliefs, and purpose. My opening words this morning are rather brief, but meaningful to me. They're from a reading in the back of the hymnal, number 564, and they're by Alice Walker. Love is not concerned with whom you pray, or where you slept the night you ran away from home. Love is concerned that the beating of your heart should kill no one. Our first hymn this morning is number 30. We'll sing all 3 verses, and you may stand if you wish. Ourselves.
I see no hands.
Let us recite our affirmation, speaking the first verse and singing the second. Soon. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
Oh, we're doing it out here. Karina. Live from the UU
From
Church.
right now.
Okay.
It's Sunday morning.
From I wouldn't want to give anyone the impression that we make things up as we go along here. But we do occasionally. And I think we forgot to welcome new people who are here this morning. We have a bunch of them. So we're kind of easing our way into joys and sorrows, and one of our great joys here is always welcoming new people. So I will say welcome and invite anybody who's here for the first time, who's comfortable doing such, coming to this mic and telling us your names and where you're from. Anybody who's new, willing to come and let us know who they are.
My name's Jason. I'm from Oklahoma City, where I grew up in the Unitarian Church there. So I came today just to see how this place is, and it's a joy to be here. Thank you.
Welcome.
You could raise the mic. You could raise the mic.
Yeah.
Hello, my name is John. This is my wife Tracy. We just moved into town from the Washington, D.C. area, and we've only been here for a couple of weeks, and we wanted to try out some different churches, and this is our first choice.
Welcome, John and Tracy. Is there anyone else who would risk that much telling us who you are and where you're from?
We have our daughter, Cindy Donaldson, with us, who is not like visiting as a new member. A number of you have met her. She's a ranger at the north end of the Grand Canyon, and we're delighted to have her come.
Great, welcome indeed. Anybody else? I always say to new people, check out our principles. They're on the back of the bulletin. And since the bulletins are a little bit new to us again, if you didn't get one, they're on a stand in the back for the order of service. Now, this is our time to invite people to share matters of joy or sorrow or concern, hoping you know as you share yours that you are heard and you are supported. We ask that they be brief and that they be personal. Who has a matter here that you would let us know? Pam?
My name is Pam Corbin, and my joy is that I think everyone should recognize who we have here as a minister. I mentioned to Bob that three of us were going to the Jackie Robbins Youth Officer, I can't even talk, Youth Symphony Program. And Bob said, "It's at night. I want you all to drive safely. I'm really concerned." And I go, that's who we have. This is who we have, someone who's concerned about us. So yes, Bob, we all made it back, but we kept it in mind. And while we were there, we met our ex-minister, who is his name? What is it?
Paul Johnson.
Paul Johnson. So Paul Johnson was an usher there. So it's really minister focused. But Bob, thank you for being concerned about us.
Thank you. Anybody else with a brief and personal matter to share? Marguerite.
I'm Marguerite Gregory. I would like us to appreciate Jackie Robinson. We went to the concert on Friday at the Lyric, and she is fabulous. If you see her on a fun way versus seriously playing the cello, she is incredible. Quite an actress, very fun to watch. So I think we should all appreciate who we have here as our music director.
Thank you, Marguerite. Anyone else? Then we always move one for those we don't say out loud, and Janet will do that. We know we carry others in our minds and hearts. The meditation is by Kenneth Patton, entitled "Let Us Worship" in the back of our hymnal. I'm just remembering that I forgot the responsive reading. We'll do that in a bit. Well, we'll do it now. Go ahead. Would you all remain seated and turn to 773?
773.
773 is the responsive reading. It's actually a dedication of our building. We aren't dedicating our building in any special way today, but this ought to be what our building is about all the time, and so that's why I picked this and almost remembered it.
It's 733 or
733. It's in the bulletin wrong, 733. A place of meeting. You remember how we do responsive readings. I read a part. You read the italics, but I've been asked to read the italics so it plays through the YouTube version. So let's just do this. A place of meeting. Out of wood and stone, out of dreams and sacrifice, the people build a home. Out of the work of their hands and hearts and minds, the people fashion a symbol and a reality. May this house be truly a place of meeting, meeting one another in warmth and joy and openness, meeting one another in courage and love and trust. May all who enter here trust one another so surely that they dare to share the deep fires that burst into anger, as much as the sweet spring waters that swell into laughter, the slow erosion of wounded tears as much as the soaring song. May these walls know silence as 100 hearts search inward, each for its own small spark of hope that might otherwise be snuffed out in the noise. May these rafters hear the voice of the child as surely as that of the orator, and the sound of the lute, the clack of the typewriter, the swish of the broom, and know that all are as holy as the shout of 1,000,000 stars. May the rain fall lightly on this house, the sun shines warmly, the winds blow softly, and bless it as a place of joy and peace. Now I think I will hold the meditation I had, and we will have moments of silence. And now our hymn is 123, Spirit of Life. We hum it and then we sing it. We remain seated. Linda Shuey, who's our missions committee, and our liaison to this family who are reunited in Indiantown after being separated at the border. Linda sent us these pictures to show. And Linda, as the pictures appear, would you just tell us who we're looking at? When we started supporting this family, I hoped that it would be the three churches in the area, Vero to the north and North Palm to the south, and us.
That was 14 months ago. So thanks to you all for doing it for this long.
They were preoccupied, and now they're in searches for ministers, so they haven't been able to join us in this. But because of Linda's willingness and the generosity of all of you, we have been able to support them month after month, and we hope to continue doing that. Now, who are we looking at, Linda?
Okay, now this is Magdalena, the mom, who was, she was deported back to Guatemala at that time under the zero tolerance. And they kept Maggie sitting next to her, that's her daughter Maggie, and I don't know the whole story because my Spanish isn't good enough, but I think they sent Maggie to somewhere in New York, and then someone in the family, as I understand, knew there was a relative here in Indiantown. So she eventually then was, I don't need this, I'm a teacher, she eventually came down here to live with her great aunt, who's not in the picture. And Magdalena just had baby Rainita, I think it was December 16th, and Maria was very distant from the family when I first met them a year ago, November. And see, she has warmed up, especially with the new baby. She even called Magdalena her mom, and that's the first time I've heard her say that in 14 months. Of course, she's afraid. She was 6 at the time of the separation, and all of us who have had 6-year-olds know she'll remember it. And she's holding Sebastian, who's 3 now, just turned 3. He was 1 when they came. And that's Juan, who is now Magdalena's partner, a really, really nice man. And he's a very talented musician. Right now, he's working in landscaping.
Are there any other pictures? Here they are.
This is, again, Magdalena holding the baby, and you can see Maria wanted to be in the picture. And up until, she's 11 now, and she's a teenager. She wouldn't pose for pictures for me. I've got a lot of pictures of the back of her head, so this was a good one.
Well, she sounds normal.
There she is holding the baby. She said, I want to hold my sister, which was cute. There she is bonding with Sebastian, he's 3 now, so he was kind of trying to find things to do. I'm just thrilled at her beginning to bond with the family. She does not live with them. She chose to stay where she's been since she came, which was 6, which was with, we call her Tia Maria, Auntie Maria.
Okay, thank you very much, Linda. Look at that little Sebastian. Wow. We periodically we raise funds for them. We did recently on Christmas Eve. We leave the Christmas stocking up all year long, and people do find their way to it on their own, but we also bring it up and try to raise money for them so we can continue supporting them. If you want to know more about the family, Linda will be happy to tell you. And there's a woman right here who wants to meet with you afterwards to talk to you about things she has. But please hold that thought until after the service. Okay, the offering. We hope people experience generosity and joy, and we invite yours because we need it. My lovely assistant, Bill. I usually try to find and search for a video of inspiration, and I just happened upon this one that seemed right on the topic. I think it says from Davies, Florida, but now hear this, I hope. That was a little different, wasn't it? Just to mention again that I'm soliciting questions, something you'd like to hear a sermon about. So when you see this, invite your questioning. It's not cue for a political group. It invites your questioning for sermons. I'm also looking for science topics that you'd like us to talk about in a science group. We're going to be trying in a couple weeks, so they could go in here also. So I'll be leaving this out, and please find your way to it with your good thoughts. UUs do believe something, don't we? From the time we returned from our recent trip, Petra, Jordan, and Luxor, Egypt, to Dubai, I have been anxious to tell you about a couple of conversations I had with fellow travelers, strangers. The ship was set up with one dining room for 3 meals for about 100 people. We soon noticed there were a few tables for 2, and they were always taken. And we soon understood why. But I would not have wanted to miss out on these conversations. But first, there's a little background story I have to tell you. For most of the 70s, I was the minister of a small, struggling Methodist congregation in Dix Hills, Long Island. If you know Long Island, Dix Hills is on the Nassau-Suffolk border. One Sunday in 1975, I think, a very distinguished-looking black man began worshiping with us. He introduced himself as Dr. Matthew Wakatama. He told us he had recently been the Minister of Education for the nation of Rhodesia. Rhodesia, led by whites, was in turmoil as it was transitioning to become Zimbabwe, led by blacks, which it did in 1980. He, Dr. Wakatama, decided to find a professorship in the U.S. with his family. He was active in our congregation and reported what was going on in Africa. He also wrote letters to the New York Times, which got published. I found one recently he sent in 1976, making a point that the U.S. had not earned a moral high ground from which to lecture Africa, particularly Zimbabwe and South Africa, which was still apartheid South Africa. We had our own apartheid, he wrote, whites to the suburbs and underserved and underfunded black ghettos called inner cities. Okay, so back to my ship, which we boarded in the Gulf of Aqaba between Egypt and Jordan, November 2022. For our first dinner at sea, we were joined by a couple, she black and he white, our age. She said, "Let's get the obligatories out of the way, name and from." After that round, I added, let's also say, career. She told us she had been a U.S. diplomat in Africa and in the EU, Brussels, and had worked in the U.S. State Department. So I said, "Did you work with anybody I might have heard of?" She said, "Have you heard of Colin Powell?" She went on to reminisce about her admiration for him. She said he liked to be called General Powell rather than Mr. Secretary or Mr. Secretary of State, because he said general was a title you really had to work for, earn, whereas Mr. Secretary might only mean you were someone's friend. Understood. She went on to tell us how much she admired his speeches. And one time she told him, "General, you give great speeches, and whoever writes them should be up for praise and promotion." To which he responded, "Madam, I write my own speeches." At that point, I found what little inner store of diplomacy I own and did not mention the one Colin Powell speech I remember, and you remember, the one speech he later said he hoped not to be remembered for. Of course, I mean the speech to the UN given to justify the invasion of Iraq in 2003. She was really interesting and spoke with authority. Her husband was a retired executive of a Bible distribution company. He said it was like the American Bible Society, but bigger. He had worked for this company in Africa, and particularly Rhodesia. He was the son of two Methodist missionaries who worked in Rhodesia. When I heard that, I had to ask, did you by any chance ever meet a man named Matthew Wakatama? He lit up and told me his parents had discovered Matthew at one of their missions, had seen the promise in him, had talked him into college, and financed his going. Well, I've seen the movies Hawaii and Mission, and haven't had the greatest admiration for missionaries. But that story about Matthew raised their stock. I know Methodists and Roman Catholics and other denominations have seeded educational systems around the world. Now, for the table chat that led to this sermon, Harry is a 90-year-old retired psychoanalyst from Irvine, California. I've mentioned we have a number of retired counselors here, and when you tell me you are that, a little voice triggers, Bob, be careful what you say. But Bob is an extrovert and doesn't listen to that little voice. But Harry wanted to talk, so I asked him if he had a specialty, and he said not really. I asked if he had worked with many children, and he said not a lot, but he found children to be basically healthy, including his own. We had just that day walked around the tombs of the Egyptian pharaohs in Luxor, and there were loudspeakers blaring their accomplishments. About one Ramses pharaoh, it was said he had 100 wives who gave him 100 sons and 100 daughters. And he married all his daughters. So I couldn't resist. Harry, what does a psychoanalyst make of that? Well, he says, I don't judge ancient cultures, but if you have that many wives, you're bound to have a few good children. Then I thought I should let him eat. But he says, well, I told you mine, now you tell me yours. So I said I had had a career as a minister in the Northeast, but then we retired to Florida, and I found the churches there pretty conservative, so I tried Unitarian Universalism. Sat near the door at first, but graduated to the front. Then Harry says, that really isn't a religion, is it? I come back, how do you define religion? Well, he says, you have to believe in something. I say, I'm pretty sure my folks believe in something, just not the same something. Beliefs and creeds are things you repeat, often for confirmation, for things your parents said they believed at your baptism. Literally confirm what they said at your baptism. So what parents said they believed. I'm pretty sure the people in my congregation would agree. They do believe that the purpose of life is to learn and to love. And such actions speak louder than repeated beliefs. And religions have sometimes led to learning and loving, and sometimes been a major block, and in fact have perpetrated evil. Harry concludes with, well, I've learned something today. And I said, so have I. And he says, what have you learned? I said, I learned I could talk to a psychoanalyst without fear or fee. How would you put it? What you believe. You might start out, I can only speak for myself, and I don't expect anyone to repeat after me. That's usually the threshold for the young in religion. My brother and I discovered church on our own and got there about the time of confirmation. So we wanted in. I had to be baptized and was baptized in the same service in which I was confirmed. And the minister agreed not to pick me, 14, up and walk around to the oohs and ahs, he's so cute. So beliefs began as things to repeat for admittance. College, for me, lowered the boom on all that because in college I thought what it means matters. And why say it if you don't know what it means? Paul Tillich saved me with God talk, having to square with meaning something and not about life somewhere else. Tillich called deity the ground of being, meaning depth. So religion was not about surface, but rather about depth. Now, ministers I knew made fun of that. Who would pray to the ground of our being? But prayer for Tillich wasn't a long-distance call. It was a searching and seeking and finding within, because everyone has depth. Everyone has depth within to which many have contributed. Tillich wrote pretty deep stuff, conceptual architecture to explain the ground, the German Grund of all existence. And I and many were glad he published books of sermons that were more understandable than his theology. One of his more famous sermons was titled, "You Are Accepted." An emigre from pre-World War II Germany and a German Lutheran minister, he believed in sin and defined it as separation from our best selves. The point of that sermon was the main point of Christianity was grace. You are accepted. An old friend of mine, a priest, used to say the problem with his brand of Christianity, Roman Catholic, was the church certainly sounded bigger on sin and what he called hoops to jump through, bigger on a penance system than forgiveness and grace, which too often seemed like an afterthought. So you wind up feeling more accepted, excluded, than accepted, included. And the culprit too often is beliefs you can't understand or can't repeat once your brain kicks in. Now, for many of us, religion started out with a creed to repeat. Tradition, what your parents said. I took part in the planning of a lot of ceremonies where the key thing was not to upset the grandparents present or the ones in their graves. However it began for us, it has become a search with no Google and no GPS, and questions more than answers. I'll promote this one more time. For us, when we were younger, certainty seemed possible. But what is certain has in fact diminished. And many cues along the way prepare you for life as a package with a lot more ambivalence and ambiguity and a lot less certainty. And if you have children, you soon learn that the only person repeating all the wisdom you have amassed and want to share is you. Beliefs have had a historical place in our personal journeys and in history. Sadly, beliefs have not highlighted grace If it was all supposed to be about grace, you are accepted, compassion even for yourself, it turned into something quite different and seemed and was more about division and divisiveness, the sheep and the goats, heaven and hell, WTH. That's the worst I can say in that department, WTH. Beliefs may be in our attics, but our experience has mattered more, a lot more. And the only thing that makes religion appealing at all is where we have experienced. You are accepted. Grace, welcome. My brother and I found our lives in church because those Methodists in Troy conveyed to us acceptance. We were welcomed, and it meant a lot. Jump ahead to what we have just survived, the pandemic, and hope to go on surviving. What mattered here as we regrouped after Zoom and as we met in the park was community, people we connected with and felt accepted, welcome, and shared values. And nobody's excluded, unless you want an echo chamber, which isn't us. UU is a mix of spirituality and activism. You might say this differently, but for me, the spirituality is not another world and time, but within what runs deep and lasting for us. And activism is as varied as we are. Now, this is a rhetorical question. What do you want to fix while we are here? I used to think we would fix a lot. Now I hope we can fix a little. But while we are trying to figure out our spiritual and our activism, I know I need a community of people who share values. A big one being, you don't give up. Liberal isn't a dirty word. Conservative isn't a dirty word. What has been dirty, toxic, and deadly, and still is, in my opinion, is letting religion be that game Eric Byrne identified, mine is better than yours. May deity, nature, or health save us from that. The closing hymn is 112. Do you hear? Let's stand as willing and able. 3 verses, 112. Please be seated. The closing words, as Pat extinguishes, are in the back of the hymnal, and the author's name is anonymous. May we be reminded here of our highest aspirations and inspired to bring our gifts of love and service to the altar of humanity. May we know once again that we are not isolated beings, but connected in mystery and miracle to the universe, to this community, and to each other.
Since this is such a positive congregation, I'm going to play a tune called When You're Smiling. If anybody knows the words, please join in if you'd like.
Let's regroup for coffee and whatever outside or in the other room, and in about 20 minutes, we'll go to the small education